I'm Ben Johnson, head of asset management client solutions with Morningstar. I'm thrilled today to be joined by David and Rishi to dig in on all things thematic investing. So to kick off, I want to go not sort of behind the music, but behind the bios with my two panelists to better understand not just what the boilerplate is that shows up in any conference agenda that you're featured in, but to get an understanding of who you are, what you're doing, what your organizations are doing to help advisors, to help the investors that they serve to navigate this landscape of thematic investing. So behind your bio, David, is quite a bit of experience in the music industry. So maybe you could start there, tell us, how it all started and where you're at today.
Yeah. Thanks, Ben. Thanks for the intro. Great to be here and talk to everybody today. So I've been in the industry for 25 years. Started out working for a company called Interscope Records and was the head of music at Disney after that. And then I started my first private equity-backed company called Evergreen. We bought a lot of publishing companies. I sold that to KKR. It became BMG Rights Management. I was then the president at a company called Live One, which owns Slacker Radio and Podcast One. And I've just been around music, operating, investing in public and private companies for the last 25 years.
That's awesome. You mentioned BMG, David. Quick handful of our audience. Who sent a penny to BMG to get like 10 cassette tapes? We got some takers back there. I definitely was among them. That's awesome. Rishi, give us a bit of the behind your bio.
Sure, Rishi Khanna. I've been an entrepreneur actually most of my career. Did my first startup almost 25 years ago, and it was actually a music startup. Though then I actually spent most of my career in hedge fund land in the alternatives world, building technology and solutions for hedge funds and their LPs. But have always been around markets and networks, and ended up at StockTwits, joined as CEO in January of 2020. Quiet year, not much happened. Have known StockTwits, have been on the platform since 2010, and have had the chance to kind of lead our growth and see kind of the rise of retail and the influence of retail on the markets and investing themes, and looking forward to having our conversation.
That's awesome. So let's get into the meat of the matter. And what I want to use as a framework for our conversation is a framework that, sort of when I was in a research capacity, me and my team dreamt up. And I borrow, with respect to thematic investing from, of all places, the horse track. And I think so much of thematic investing is the equivalent of almost a trifecta or a box trifecta bet at the horse track. So for people who aren't big, on betting on the ponies, a trifecta basically is I'm going to get the first three horses right in exactly that order, or if I box it, I'm going to get them right, but doesn't depend on the order. And when I think of those three legs of the bets, when I think about thematic investing, the first leg of the bet I think about is the durability of the theme. So is this a theme that truly has legs, that is investable, that is going to be with us not just today, but tomorrow and well into the future, because that ultimately is going to be a huge factor for success. So, thematic investing, may or may not have been born in Chicago of all places in 1946 when the television fund launched. So at the point in time, there were 1 million televisions in the entire United States of America. I think there are 1 million TV sets here, like on premise here at this conference now today. You look at other even more flimsy themes, right? We had years ago 3 work from home ETFs that launched. Well, we're all here on the beach now in California and no longer in our basements. That didn't really pan out. So, when you think of a theme, David, and in particular music, how do you think about the durability of the theme, this very first important leg of the bet that an investor is making when trying to invest from a theme perspective?
Yeah, no, thank you. So I'm the founder and CEO of MUSQ. MUSQ is the first pure play music ETF designed to give investors exposure to the global music industry. Music today is the most overlooked, underhyped, and undervalued media asset. And JP Morgan said exactly the same thing. There are 500 million paid subscribers today, doubling to 1.2 billion in the next 4 years. The industry is doubling to 131 billion. Live music is on fire right now. I'm sure a lot of you went to go see a lot of shows this summer, from Taylor Swift to Beyonce to Harry Styles to Ed Sheeran to Springsteen, amazing tours. All the record companies and the publishing companies are reporting record revenues right now. Music is a growth story. Music is here to stay. Music is being disrupted right now by AI. AI is revolutionizing tools for artists to create new music. It's boosting creativity. So as a theme, music is a tremendous growth story. It's an exciting investment opportunity. And there are so many companies today to invest in. That's the reason I set this up. I realized we have 12 streaming companies in our fund. Small names and big names. We have 22 content companies. Everybody here, I'm sure, knows Warner's and Universal and Sony, but there's HIM in Taiwan. There's HYBE in South Korea. There's AVEX in Japan. There's JYP, SM Entertainment, YG Plus. I could give you a list of names that you probably have never heard of or are familiar with, and they're very important music companies. So as a global theme, music is exciting. It's investable now. Kids love it. RIAs love it. Pension funds love it. What MUSQ does, it's a very portable and convenient way for investors now to get exposure to the global music industry. It's completely liquid today. You don't have to be in a private equity investment. You no longer have to be an LP at KKR or Blackstone or Apollo. You now have a completely liquid portfolio. We launched the fund on July 7th. We have, in the last 60 or less, about 40 trading days, we have $10 million in the fund. We have about 10,000 shares being traded a day. Investors have loved this from the outset, and I think that the opportunity here, when you think about this, just one last data point, there's 7.3 billion cell phone users in the world. It's 90% of the world's population. I don't know anybody who has a cell phone that doesn't consume some form of music on their phone, whether it's paid music, whether it could be an advertiser-supported streaming service, or it could be social media. But music is ubiquitous, and now it's here as a completely liquid opportunity for investors to engage in.
Well, and passes the durability test, right? Like, it's been with us since we first started banging rocks together, how many ever thousands of years ago. I know I've been buying a Pearl Jam t-shirt at every one of their shows that I've been going to in the 2+ decades I've been following them. Rishi, I'm curious, when you think about durability and you see sort of activity, affinity, like among the StockTwits community, like what do you see in terms of the spectrum of things that they latch onto with respect to things that, yes, are going to be here with us as long as music, and things that maybe fit the category of, like, I mentioned the work from home example earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, when I think about durability, you want to think about, like, kind of, hey, what are the fundamental underlying, like, kind of drivers of a theme on a go-forward basis? Music, we all know. I mean, like, music's not going to go anywhere, right? And it's only getting better, so that makes sense. We see a lot. I think even the last panel was about climate change, right? I mean, there's a lot going on there. I think you're also seeing, the way to understand durability is like, hey, how niche or how micro is this concept, right? I think one of the things we are seeing right now with the rise of tools and data and technology is the ability to kind of maybe get a little too micro, like too niche, where, I did not know there were 3 work-from-home ETFs, so it's probably a little too niche in my opinion. But being able to kind of look at that from the data standpoint, we look at it. How do we monitor it from a data? We look at, like, hey, what are the trends of, like, people following a stock, following tickers, or following groups of tickers, but you still have to just go back to the fundamentals. Energy is a big interesting theme, and there's areas within that we'll probably talk about later. But looking at the data and aligning it to fundamentals, and does that story make sense? Is that where we are going as society? I think the whole aging of the populations in, like, a lot of the first world G20 kind of countries and stuff. Another interesting theme in how are companies addressing that, and are there ways to tackle that? So you got to look at. There's a fundamental element to it, to just, hey, can you tell this story? But then you can look at the data and you can see what people are following, and that's kind of, you can see from the retail, following 8 million retail investors on StockTwits, and see what signals are coming out of that to help you formulate your thesis.
Yeah, and I think you both put down a few comments that I think segue into the second leg of this trifecta bet that investors are making when they approach the market from a thematic lens, which is to get not just the theme right, like with respect to, is it real, is it durable, but how do I match like the appropriate like investment opportunity set to that theme? And we see really, like, either in the managed fund space or even within individual equities, fit can vary, right? Like, there are firms out there that, like, yeah, they may, like, have a sort of side gig almost in a particular theme, be it things like water purification, AI, you name it. And then there are other names that are bang on that theme, that like the entirety of their enterprise depends on that theme being durable, depends on the growth of that theme. So, David, from the point of view of like portfolio construction for a fund like MUSQ, how do you make sure that you're kind of hitting the theme on the head and not getting a bunch of firms in that portfolio that it's a sideshow and it's not really going to move the needle for them?
No. So we spent 6 months back testing. We designed a portfolio 6 months ago. I hired Jane Edmondson at EQM. We worked together, collaborated on building what we thought was a very representative portfolio of music companies around the world across 5 buckets: streaming, content, live music and ticketing, equipment technology, satellite and radio. The rules for MUSQ are such that all the companies have to generate more than 50% of their revenues from music. So they have to be real music companies, or they have to be a top 5 player in one of those 5 categories. No company can have, so it's all market cap weighted. No company can have a single position of greater than 7%. No company can have a market cap less than 100 million, has to have at least $500,000 of daily trading liquidity. And it really creates a really great music and technology fund with small cap, mid cap, and large cap companies. But it addresses every aspect of the global music ecosystem across those 5 categories. So we wanted this to be a real pure play music company for all kinds of investors that want exposure to music. If you're excited by Taylor Swift's Monster, Eras Tour, you buy the fund, she's signed to Universal, it's in the fund, she did a deal with Live Nation, all the different food chain elements of her success are in this fund. And you can look that across South Korean artists or Japanese artists. So we wanted this to be a really thoughtful. I've been in the industry for 25 years, right? So I think there are a lot of interesting thematic funds out there. I think some people just kind of cobble them together very quickly. They come up with a catchy name. I have a relationship with most of the CEOs in this fund. I know these companies intimately. I've been operating them for a long time. And so I think I bring a unique perspective to it. And that's the value that MUSQ has. I think we're really introducing a very thoughtfully designed music fund to investors. If you want exposure to music, if you think music's an exciting asset class, that's what the construction of this portfolio is designed to do.
So I'm curious, Rishi, like within the community, the StockTwits community, like how do you see this process of like matching like theme to like investment opportunities take place? Like, and is there even like interesting kind of like behavioral patterns you can suss out whereby like people gravitate towards one thing, or you've got contrarians? Like what are some of the patterns that you see?
Well, the interesting, how you discover that, the interesting thing is, about by following and engaging in the community. And StockTwits was started by StockTwits, the founder, invented the cash tag back in 08, 09, and that was what made it different than Twitter in that it's organized also by the ticker, so you can follow specific companies as opposed to following people. But the discovery mechanism there that I thought was interesting was, hey, you might have found one particular, whether it's an ETF or a single name stock or whatever it might be, but then the community that's talking there are people that will help you start discovering, well, here, there's this other company too, and comparing it. Obviously, right now, electric vehicles and the whole EV space is, a big thing. And I did not know half the companies that existed in the space until, you might start with Tesla and then you add in some, Rivian when it was there, et cetera. VinFast recently, right? Was just, recently came up. I learned there's a VinFast store down the street, folks. It actually exists. But, the following the community, right? And understanding what other people are talking about, learning from them and seeing what else they're looking at helps you then piece together what does that space look like, right? So whether it's, uranium's a hot theme right now and an interesting, unknown kind of theme. It's hot from a StockTwits perspective, but because nuclear is a rising, more and more accepted that, hey, we're going to have to go nuclear and there's a shortage of uranium. And okay, how do you play uranium? And turns out there's 5, 10 different companies underlying there that play in the uranium, single name companies, as well as I think there's 1 or 2 uranium ETFs and whatnot. And so I think leveraging the community, and it's the same thing as kind of this event, this festival is, hey, you leverage your networks, you leverage learning in that way, because we can't all have all the information in our head at the time. And so that I think is one of the most fundamental, best ways to discover a theme, is you start someplace and you start pulling the threads on it. And in a social context, you get to pull the threads from millions of users, as opposed to trying to find one research report to the next research report to the next research report.
So I want to move to the third and final leg of this thematic bet, as I see it, which has everything to do with what all investing has everything to do, which is valuation, right? If you pay too much, you're not going to get much in return. If you buy something at a discount to what it's truly worth, you're going to get it, ideally at least market returns, if not above market returns. And we've seen patterns in the past where a lot of these products come to market in the managed investment space at precisely the wrong time in this respect. And I think the 3 work from home ETFs I mentioned before were perfect case in point, like top ticked, Zoom, Peloton, you name it. How should investors think about valuation? Even music, David. I was watching Bloomberg News this morning, and the back and forth between the anchors was about the CPI read, and they were blaming the CPI read on Taylor Swift. They're like, it's Taylor Swift's fault. Guy Johnson said, everything's Taylor Swift's fault because we're now living through. I've heard the word funflation, which is the first time I've heard that derivative of inflation, but it makes sense, right? Because you're paying through the nose now to have these live experiences. So, how do you make sure that, you're latching onto a theme when there's still upside and when it's not all priced in already?
Yeah. So let's talk about valuation. As a music consumer, you're paying 40% less today than you did 10 years ago or 12 years ago. When CDs were around, when ticket sales for live shows were cheaper, okay? Number 2, and I'm gonna support the first thing I said, which was that music is the most single under-monetized asset. You pay $11 a month for 150 million songs if you're a paid subscriber. You're paying triple that for Netflix, for Disney. So it's cheap. Music is being given away, and subscribers are growing, and price hikes will go up in the next 2 to 3 years by $1. What does $1 do? Spotify has 200 million paid subscribers. You raise it by $1, that's $2.5 billion of incremental revenue by raising it $1 with one company. When you add up Apple, Amazon, Google, you raise it another $1, that's another $5 billion. So and it's going to go up several times over the next 10 years. So think about that as the growth potential. So Live Nation, one of our holdings, just doubled its output for live music shows for next year. So consumers are going to be paying more in line with what they paid 10 years ago. Streaming is cheap. Valuations are cheap. Look at valuations on all these AI companies, NVIDIA. Music stocks are trading at a third valuation of all of these AI companies. So I don't think valuation is, I think that music stocks are undervalued relative to all of their peers that are paying so much money to develop content. Spotify is 45% of what Netflix charges, with very little churn, by the way, when they raise their prices. And they pay a fortune to produce original programming. Now, by the way, music's having its day because there's a strike and everyone loves music. And it's just cheap compared. And rates will go up. So I think it's an exciting time. I think the growth potential is there. I think the stocks are cheap relative to where they should be. Anyway, so that's what I believe.
I'm curious, David. Like, where does that stop? Like, do we get all the way back to like the equivalent of, me lining up at Rose Records to pay $17.99 for Smashing Pumpkins' Siamese Dream decades ago? Like, at some point, people are going to cry uncle, I would imagine.
Well, look, in good times and bad times, people are consuming music. We view music as a necessity in life. I don't know how you go through life without music, to be honest. In good times and bad times, you're celebrating it. If you're depressed, you got probably artists you listen to. And so I think it's just pretty cheap, and it's not going away. And the industry's growing, and everybody who has a mobile phone is a potential user for music. People want to go see shows. Music's up. Live music revenues are up 10 times from where they were in COVID. People want to go out. They want to see their favorite artist. They want to experience them on a music service that they may have, which they've discovered through a playlist, through Rap Caviar on Spotify or something. Then they want to go and experience live music from them. So I think it's an exciting growth opportunity. I don't think the stocks in this portfolio are overvalued, and I think that we're going to see a lot of exciting things happen in the music industry. And like I said, I think that people will ultimately pay more because they're used to paying more from 10 years ago. When CDs were out, you bought vinyl, you bought CDs. Now it's the digitization of music. And AI is just about to transform everything. AI is going to make music more ubiquitous. There's going to be more opportunities to consume music. Music is a tool that's used in every social media video. So for those reasons, I believe that it's a very strong investment case, and we haven't even scratched the surface, honestly, about where music could go. Like I said, J.P. Morgan called it the most undermonetized and single best investment in media it's ever seen, and Goldman Sachs supports all of that with all the data points that I said. You can read the Goldman Sachs Music in the Air report. You could read the Luminate report. We had 4 trillion streams already in 2023. So you can draw your own conclusions. Go to, look at all the holdings in our fund. Go to musq.com and look up. We have 48 companies across all those categories. Take a look. It's a really exciting, diverse basket of music companies that are all engaged in the whole ecosystem of music.
Was that Good Times, Bad Times, a subtle Led Zeppelin reference? Did you sneak that in there?
I'm kidding. Look, I think everybody likes music, and everybody seemed to enjoy last night,
For sure.
Yeah.
I know I did. Rishi, from the valuation perspective, how do you see that playing out? Like, do you see patterns in behavior that, are emblematic of what's long been the worst of behavior? Do you see a contrarian tilt among your members, and is there anything we can do to help ground people in this is a really exciting theme, but at the end of the day, valuation is a force of gravity in markets?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to say I can tell you the magic formula, this is a good valuation or not. I'd probably be running $1 billion fund or something if I could. But I do think, leveraging from a durability, like we were talking about durability earlier, right? I mean, you can't assume that you're going to time it perfectly on valuation, but you do want to look at, entry points and exit points are tough. Like from the community perspective, you can take there's a technical perspective to take, and one of the things, we often look at just from a community and like indicators is, hey, where is the momentum of conversation relative to like the price action of conversation as a technical thing? Like is one ahead of the other? And that can a little bit tell you like, have things gotten like really frothy? I think a lot of us would make the argument that AI may be a little bit ahead, but everything goes through cycles. So if you believe in the durability of something, it does matter when you get in, right? I mean, we all know like the entry and exit points matter of these thematic investments. But if you believe in the durability, then you want to leverage kind of the technical side of things. I think where we look at it a lot from the community perspective and the data perspective to help understand, is this the right time to get in? Even if I believe strongly in this theme, is it just way overhyped right now? The hype cycle, if you guys are familiar with this classic hype cycle, I think that's a guide that has been durable over the last 40, 50, 60 years of anything related to kind of tech and innovation side of the world. So yeah, I mean that's kind of we look at it from a technical perspective of the is this the right value time?
Well, and it's come up a few times, and I think as you begin to like simultaneously like look back and look forward, right? Like the toolkit is always evolving. It's always getting, ideally like better, faster, cheaper. We've mentioned AI a number of times. I even know, like within Morningstar, within our own data set, like we're using natural language processing to actually identify when we activate new funds in our data set, like, do we think these funds are thematic? Yes, no, or maybe. If so, like which various groupings do they sit in? And David, you alluded to before too, like just from like a music creation perspective, right? Like that toolkit's expanding. So like, what do you see like kind of like on the horizon with respect to, the industry itself? You alluded to, again, creation among other things, and then any opportunities to like leverage that within like the portfolio setting.
So I think just to kind of crystallize something, I think with any thematic investment, you need to, have a clear, disruptive view about what you're investing in. Right? You need to make sure it's investable, and you need to have long-term expectations of growth. And I think music does all that. Music is incredibly disruptive, especially now. Okay, artists through AI are uploading 120,000 new tracks a day to all the different services. Right? So there is more music. More tools available to artists today. I don't know if you listened to Paul McCartney's new album with John Lennon, but it was all through AI. It was great. And so what that's allowing is, and Google just announced a deal with Universal where they're going to allow creators to sample music from like Universal's catalog. So it just creates enormous windfall opportunities because, as most of you may or may not know, when you sample songs, you wind up owning derivative ownership interests in new works, and that just creates a windfall of revenue. So AI is unleashing creativity, is unleashing opportunity, and unleashing revenue potential. When I say revenue potential, all these new songs now have the ability to license previous songs and just create more revenue from when these songs get performed. So the industry, because of AI, I think is going to be very disruptive. If you look back over the last, 100 years, starting with, or 150 years, starting with the telegraph, it gets disrupted every 15 years. It's time now for another disruption. 15 years ago it was Napster and streaming. Before that it was CD sales replacing vinyl. So we're right now, we're just scratching the surface with what AI can do, and that coupled with all the other data points around just the number of paid subscribers that are growing, and live music, and the industry is on steroids right now with content and technology. And what I think is exciting about this fund, by the way, for all investors, for our kids, for us, for RIAs, for investor, is that this is like a fund that can bridge emotion with capitalism. And I think people now, as I said, people they never really associated music as an investment class. It was always overlooked because you were spending money in it. But now there's an opportunity to actually generate revenues from it. And so why not be a consumer and a purchase and an investor in it at the same time? And so the opportunities are big. Technology is driving a lot of this growth today, and we're really excited about this fund.
So how many years out are we from a scenario where we've got a hologram of Jimi Hendrix playing Taylor Swift covers on stage here at Future Proof, David?
Yeah, well, holograms exist now. I saw Tupac Shakur on tour. It's being used now. I just saw something with Jimi Hendrix. So you're going to see really exciting things that are already being used in Las Vegas, and companies like Base Entertainment are producing shows like with this. So technology is just going to drive more viewers. It's going to drive more ticket sales. It's going to drive more content. That's what it's going to do. It's going to feed into that. And if you look, we have, I want to say 11 equipment stocks in our fund that actually all address AI, from Roland to Dolby to Yamaha to Sonos. These are all really important technology companies that are equipment companies, and they're not only building equipment in recording studios, but they're building AI tools for musicians. So the technology is going to drive more content. And that's why, and Goldman Sachs has supported all this. Again, if you're remotely interested in what I'm talking about, you go read the Music in the Air report. Lisa Yang, who's the top music analyst for Goldman Sachs, is so bullish on music right now. So it's just an exciting time to be invested in it.
So Rishi, how is like the toolkit evolving, right? From kind of like discovery, community, like efficiency, not even just with respect to like themes, but just, how investors come together, and obviously like we've seen examples of that have been maybe I'll call it suboptimal, right? Like, Reddit Wall Street Bets is like, feels like that was a lifetime ago, but it was not that long ago. Like people like crowdsourcing money to like fly planes with banners that say like back up the truck on GameStop over Miami Beach. Like how do we leverage the technology? How do we leverage the community, for good in not just today, but more so in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big overall trend that we've seen over the last 25 years, just in investing in general, is the access to data, the access to information, the narrowing of the gap of informational asymmetry amongst like anyone that wants to invest, whether you're institutional all the way down to retail, has, first it was slowly, but and then all of a sudden it's very fast, and so the first layer of that is just being able to have access to the data. I think what we've seen from social, and now we saw the impact in the world of investing and trading because of the GameStop phenomena, but social's ability to now move that information quickly and broadcast it and get it out into the hands of not just maybe your small personal community of 10, 20, 50 people, but it can get to 10, 20, 50 million people very quickly. So the combination of over time technology has made our ability to access information much easier and then distribute that information much easier has been the first leg of it. But what we're seeing now, like I think one of the interesting themes in thematic investing, no pun intended, or maybe entirely intended, is the ability, we're seeing a lot of like kind of direct indexing tools and the ability for people to kind of create their own tools. Now, we saw a little bit of this ago, about 10 years ago. There was a thing, there was like, if anyone remembers, maybe not, there was a company called like Motif that was doing this, right? Where, hey, let people create their own thematic, investment, not proper ETFs, but rather just baskets, right? Lists of things. That didn't work out, it was for probably a lot of reasons, but I think we are now seeing like the second or maybe third generation of that tool set. There's a number of, tech companies out there, and probably even within the bigger, companies such as like Morningstar and whatnot, where, having the tools to go in and create your own themes, and then because you have access to the data now, you can do the filtering, you can do the sorting, you can, look at whatever you're looking at, whether it's fundamentals, whether it's, you create technical themes, whatever it might be, and then you can get it out there. You can share it with your community, and I think that'll be an interesting impact to like kind of the world of investing products of, hey, what, my ability to just go create one, or like, let's pretend you did not have an ETF, but I'm like, oh my God, like David's like really into like music investing. Let me go follow his, basket of stocks. I think that's something for us to watch, because a lot of people have opinions now, and a lot of people want to share their opinions. And as long as you can find that, 100 or 1,000 fans or whatever it is, can you make that into something? So, from a technology perspective, I think that's all driven by the technology and innovation, and it's, the current culmination of data, information, social, the rise of social, and you have to pay attention to social now. I mean, that's, kind of, I think if that's not obvious now, then it never will be to someone, right, kind of thing.
No, definitely. And I think, as always, it all starts with data. It's just that data is like, there's more of it, it's better, it's cheaper. It's, we're carrying it around with us in our pocket on a supercomputer all day, every day. And reducing the frictions too, right? To the extent that, like, you think of the plumbing of the financial system, and now we've got, fractional share trading, we've got commissions being zeroed out. So those frictions have brought down access points across the board. So, you can take the supercomputer out of your pocket, and, maybe comes the day where you roll your own basket for the next theme.
Well, right, and I think personalization is that's the outcome of that, right? So obviously we have a ton of wealth advisors and whatnot here. In the past, you had to kind of be able to figure out and craft what investments that you want to place your clients in, because they might have had a very strong personal interest in something. Now that personal interest can be expressed pretty specifically. You'll have the tools to very much personalize each and everything at some point, whether and fractional is a big part of it. I was talking to the Apex guys. I mean, they're going to be launching like fractional fixed income, right? Like, so, that's kind of, I'm like, wow, we're there. I've been having like, once we get to fractional options, I think the world's going to end, but, and I'm not sure we need that, but, yeah, I mean, like the personalization through themes and stuff will probably, the second half of this decade, I think we'll see a lot more of that.
Yeah, that's amazing to me. I mean, fractional fixed income in particular. I remember before I joined Morningstar 17 years ago, being on an advisor team at what was then Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, and you call the bond desk, and they were not always either nice or helpful. So that is, pretty dramatic evolution in the grand scheme of things. So we're going to open it up in a minute to questions from you all. If you don't have anything, I'm going to put you on the spot. No, I'm kidding. But I would be remiss, because we've got David up here who's got decades of experience in the music industry, if I didn't ask you to share one of your favorite, like, anecdotes from your time in this industry, in the vein of, I don't know if it's a myth or not. I don't know if this has been debunked, right? Like the Van Halen only wants orange, like Eminem's camp. Like, any fun music anecdotes that you can share with us?
Yeah, I mean, I had the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with Michael Jackson when he was alive, and in the studio with him, and one of the reasons I love this business is just to be around talent like that. When you see talent in the studio, I was also I worked alongside David Foster, who was like a big producer. One of my first things when I went to Interscope was to do David Foster's special Christmas album. And so I had a chance to work with Celine Dion, Mariah Carey, BB and CeCe Winans, Michael Crawford, who had just come off Phantom of the Opera. So I'll never forget being in the studio with Michael Crawford while he was warming up his vocals. He had these little fisherman friends he would put in his mouth to clear out his nasal path. And then that voice which was just amplified into the studio. So, working with talent over my career, and I've been really fortunate to have exposure to Celine Dion and a lot of artists. Anyway, that alone sends chills and keeps me going.
This panel discussion was brought to you by Fisherman's Friend, everyone. So with about 5 minutes left, I want to open it up to you all. We've got Slido here in front of us, but raise your hand, shout. I can repeat questions. What questions do you have for David and for Rishi? Don't be shy. And if they're backdoor Roth IRA questions, that's, again, I joked about that before, but this is the wrong panel, if that hasn't already become immediately obvious.
I mean, I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how many folks in the audience here were aware of MUSQ prior to coming here?
Wow.
Okay, so about
Pretty
half.
good hit rate.
Okay. So I write almost every day on LinkedIn. If the audience is interested in learning more about what we're doing, you can follow me at David Schulhof on LinkedIn, also on Twitter. But I write every day, post interesting articles about the industry, about the holdings in our fund, all the different music events going on around the country, around the world, that ties into our holdings. Talk a lot about the earnings around the individual holdings. So I write about this stuff regularly. So if you're interested in just being educated and interested in music, you can follow me on LinkedIn.
My wife just texted me this morning that we have to get Olivia Rodrigo tickets for New York in April. Can you help with that?
Yeah, well,
Just checking.
Yeah, probably. My daughter is obsessed with Olivia Rodrigo, but
They were for my daughters, not me.
And Rishi, where can folks? You're doing my job now for me, David. This is going to be my final question. Where can folks find you, your team's work?
Yeah, I mean, obviously on StockTwit. So if you're not familiar with it, check it out and join and sign up there. My handle there is Arcana, and same on Twitter and LinkedIn, kind of the standard stuff. Though I spend a lot less time on Twitter nowadays, post self-destructing Elon Musk. But so find me there.
Yeah, Twitter can always get worse, it turns out.
Amazingly.
Well, I want to thank you both for a great conversation. I want to thank you all for your time and attention. This has been a fun conversation, and look forward to keeping it going maybe next year with a hologram Jimi Hendrix.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Thanks, Rishi.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out.